when somebody says I am a priest, people associate it with spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't quite understand the meaning of the word spirituality. Is it like gut feeling or intuition or some energy around you, or what is spirituality for you?
Well, there are many types of spiritualities, you know, and our spirituality happens to be Christian spirituality.
Okay.
It is, I think, all of what you have said already, you know, about a life force. But it's about how we develop that area of our lives. You know, our spirituality is something that we grow into by educating ourselves, and what feeds into it are, you know, the great gurus of our world. Maybe it doesn't have to be confined to Catholicism.
Yeah.
You can take the best of the wisest people you see. I mean, I think it's a big mistake, and church has done this in the past, only to take what Catholicism offers and to exclude. Again, I'd say a holistic approach is better, because there are lots of great people who maybe haven't even known God, and yet they have something positive to offer. The spirituality that we try to grow in as Redemptorists here belonging to the congregation I'm in is the spirituality of our congregation, which is the outreach to the poor and the preaching of the word as good news, and trying to be available to people as best we possibly can. That's our spirituality. There are other brands of spirituality, let's say, where they might work on a stricter regime that say you must be A, B, C and D. It's a bit like the weight loss. There are different options. You can go online and find different categories, but they're all more or less heading towards the same thing. But Christian spirituality, I think, is a source of, again, your friend had mentioned the self-help books. You know, the original self-help books are the lives of the saints. Mm-hmm. You know, how can I be the best I can be? Well, maybe I can imitate these. And how did they become who they are? They became, as you said, the first of the coaches was Jesus, because they imitate the life of Jesus.
Yeah.
And in that imitation, we try our best. We never get there, but we're trying to be the best that we can be.
Who else does inspire you, apart from God or Jesus?
In our world.
In our world.
Lots and lots and lots of ordinary people. I have met some amazing people throughout my life. People who don't even know that they inspire me, you know, just as there are people for whom I'm an inspiration and I don't know why, you know, but I have met the greatest of people in all sorts of scenarios. And thankfully, during my life, you know, I've had the great opportunity to be in different parts of the world. So I think very clearly of a humble family, maybe that I met in Brazil, who on top of their own poverty, were able to share from the little they had to give life and hope to others, you know. But then I think of my own family. And I think of the goodness, let's say, of my mother towards and my father towards us, as trying to be the best they could be towards us. And now I look at my sister who cares for my mother, you know, and how we all try to do that. We're still inspired by our mother at this stage of our lives. But I also like to recognize that my sister has a difficult job to do, you know. And these are people, I think if our minds are open, we will find lots of inspiration. If they're closed, we'll find nothing.
Yeah, and they're all creation of God.
Absolutely, absolutely, and in their own way. I once went to a workshop by a lady, I can't think of her name now, it'll probably come to, Margaret Silf was her name, Silf. She's an English woman. She's involved in Ignatian spirituality. And she taught me at a workshop one time about opening my eyes to the world around me. Like, for example, to say that right now in this moment here in time, I might have a homily that I can use, you know, or watching here the camera people working. There may be something, if I use it right, I may get inspiration for that. And the example she gave was very interesting because it was about going out in the month of January through a forest, and as she walked along, she said that something shiny caught her eye, and it was glistening. And when she went over, there was one leaf from a tree that had probably fallen in November, and it was hanging on to a gossamer thread, you know, a spider's web, a piece of a spider's web. And she said it was hanging on for dear life, just here, and glistening in the sun.
So
and
poetic.
Beautiful. And she said, you know, that leaf brought me joy. But she said, I understood also that that leaf was dead because it had fallen from the tree, and yet it helped her to know, you know, that those who are gone before us can still bring us great joy. And it just, like that, I think she also brought it further to say, many people in life are just hanging on by a thread. And even when they hang on by a thread, they can bring joy. And maybe there's a message here for us in terms of people who are dying, you know, or people who are just holding on to the last bit of life, that there is always a message that can be learned if the right eyes are looking at it. That's sort of philosophical and deep, but...
Wow. I have a friend who is an atheist, and she is a teacher of mathematics, Kate. And she asked you a question. Why do you believe in something that doesn't exist and do not believe in common sense?
Well, see, I do believe in something that does exist. And I'm just, I mean, that's her choice. And I'm happy to leave the atheist. But the atheist needs to have a lot of figuring out done, because she is one who does not believe in God. I am one who does believe in God. But I don't say that I'm right. I don't say, you know, claim that she is wrong. So she has a bit of work to do, I think. So atheists are complicated people in their own right, you know. Again, I would say have your own space, enjoy your own space. And, you know, there's many as an atheist will say, I'm an atheist, but please God, I'll continue to be an atheist. And I'm thinking, well, why did you include please God in that one? But I know your friend won't do that. I'm happy to believe in the God I believe in, because I believe it as a real God. And so does, let me tell, the atheists of our world, you know, the vast majority of the human race believe in God. Or believe in gods, and hopefully they have the generosity to say that those who don't believe, they're fine, and enjoy your life.
Yeah, and I know that Redemptorists have their icon, our Mother of Perpetual Help, and you are very dedicated to this icon. And why this icon? What's the story behind? Is there any symbolism behind it?
Huge.
Okay. Could you share, please?
This is stolen property.
Stolen property? Oh, wow.
The inn of the Mother of Perpetual Help was brought from Crete in, I think it was like the 15th century. It was robbed by traders who went to Crete and stole it from a church. It was brought to Rome, and it was put into a church. First of all, it was in a person's home until it was coming near to their death, and at their death they confessed to their family that they had stolen the image and brought it from a church in Crete. Then they said, we must give it to a church. So they placed it in a church in Rome. And it was in the church in Rome for many, many, many years, until Napoleon came and destroyed the church, and nobody heard any more about the miraculous image. Until, I think it was, no, my dates mightn't be right on this right now, but let's say the end of the 19th century, somebody was started remembering about this powerful image, and a young altar boy who had worked in the church where the image was said, I know where the picture is. And so it was brought to the Redemptorist Church, now on the site of the old ruin on the Via Merellana in Rome. It's the Church of Sant'Alphonse, like our own one here. And in it then, the Pope at the time gave the image to the Redemptorists and told them, make Mary known throughout the world under the title of the Mother of Perpetual Help.
Wow.
And when that was done, she is the most widely known icon of our Mother. And in it, there's a huge story in the image, you know, because Mary is there and she has Jesus presented, and Jesus has woken from a dream. And we know this by the sandal falling off his foot. And he has seen above him, you see the two angels, one with the cross and one with the spear and the hyssop stick, that talk of his passion and death. And then her look follows everybody. If you come into the church here and see, no matter where you stand, Mary's eyes are looking at you. And the image is supposed to be
present in your life
all the time and watching you, and that's why they say she's the Mother of Perpetual Help, or Perpetual Succor is the old name. And that Mary's solution isn't to look to her. She is looking to you and presenting Jesus. And I think this is the correct understanding of church, that Mary doesn't come to be the main player. It's not the story of the world featuring Mary. It's the story of the world featuring Jesus and God. But also co-star is Mary, so she presents Jesus to the world this way, and Jesus is clinging to her hand. And if we want to read another message, Jesus says, hold tight to your mother, hold tight to your mother of perpetual help, because she will always support you. So it's a wonderful picture, and the original is actually quite small, and it has been restored in the Vatican museums just about 10 years ago, and is now hanging over the main altar on the Via Merulana in Rome, and in the Church of St. Alphonse.
And it's not very typical for Catholic churches, no icons.
No.
But for Orthodox, of course. And I know that Orthodox people, they pray in front of icons, and they believe they're like intermediaries between you and God, and like that you could even be heard quicker. Here it's unusual.
Yeah, and then I think if you understand iconography, the icons are written, they're not painted. People will say, oh, this is painted. It's not painted, they're actually written, and they're part of the spirituality of the painter or the writer. So in real terms, you should never say that's a beautiful painting.
Yeah.
It's really a book, because it's a spirituality. It's written by the iconographer.
When you asked your parish during this whole communion service what countries they were from, there was the whole globe in front of you,
Yeah.
And it proves again that Luxembourg is a world in a miniature.
Yes.
And here we care a lot about diversity and inclusion and integration, and we speak a lot about happy coexistence, understanding, and many things, And Father Michael Brel, your Superior General of the Congregation of the Most Holy Redeemer, last year addressed people on YouTube, it was for Christmas, with the words.
We live in a world right now that is suffering so much from division, misunderstanding, violence, hatred, war. Jesus offers us another way of being, to become one with those who are different from us, to encounter them truly as a brother or sister, to listen to what makes them who they are, and to share with them what makes us who we are, disciples and followers of Jesus the Redeemer. He offers us another way of resolving conflicts. Rather than reacting with violence, to try to listen and see where are the hurts and the wounds which cause us to see things so differently.
Great words. For me, it's just the instruction of how to be diverse, and how to really care of inclusion. In this department, there are so many questions to our governments, to different religious groups, and my friend again has a very good question about division. Why do you think people always want to divide, like men versus women, black versus white, Catholic versus Muslims, millennials versus baby boomers, masks or no masks? And though we could all live well together in this society, diversity is what makes us even stronger. So why do we tend to divide everything?
Michael Brel's quote, I think, is very, very good. It's a plan that the church could listen to also, because you have lots of divisiveness there too, and division. I think the way forward is by understanding the struggle of other people. I'm not too sure about the division of masks and not masks, because masks is the required modus operandi right now in order to deal with the big threat to the whole world. And it's not really a choice that we're given, to say, well, I will wear a mask if I want to. you know, it's a requirement because it's seen as the greater good. And I think sometimes the greater good must be served, and particularly in vast populations. But the division of our world has always been, you know, from the very beginning, male and female, but they're meant to be the same and seen as the one entity. Why it happens? Power, I would say, in the end of the day. You know, it's always power. It's power that segregates and divides. And even like your questioner there is asking about the division between Christianity and Muslims, within Christianity there's huge division. You know, lots, and from the country I come from, we had a war that, you know, ended so many lives and brought so much sorrow with two Christian groups, one against the other. Why? Don't ask me. I think it's when people fail to show respect for each other. I think the first Sunday I was here, I spoke about a colleague of ours who's now gone to his heavenly reward, Alec Reid. He was heavily involved in the peace process in Northern Ireland. And he would have always said that we need to cultivate respectful listening. And respectful listening means that somehow we can agree to disagree. Without going to war with each other, you know. So for the things of our world that I don't understand, it's not correct that I cut them out or decide that they need to be done away with. The fact that I can't understand them does not mean that I am right.
Yeah.
You know, but it means that maybe I failed to listen and hear the story. And I think particularly, and you probably want to hit into this area, you know, areas of sexuality and division in that way. It's very important, I think, that we learn to respectfully listen to people's stories. Because when we do that, it's again, like Michael Braille is saying, it is taking on the heart and the mind of Christ, who is open to all.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yes, and another question is just about that, from Camila. She's Italian, living in Luxembourg, and she's saying that Pope Francesco is open to many tough topics nowadays, and like gay relationships or divorce, and nowadays there are so many divorce cases, and when marriages fail, and how do you see a challenge of marriage breakups from the church point of view? Because I know that the Catholic Church is moving towards it now.
Yeah, I think it's part of the reality of life, you know, and again, in our understanding, if we learn to walk in the shoes of people, I think there are two stories and then there's the truth. But I would like to see an accommodation of a lot of these things, but I'd also like to see an investment of time and energy to making relationships work. And part of that probably comes in things like marriage preparation, you know, which some people, when it comes to myself, why do I need to be preparation? I've lived with my partner for whatever 10 years, you know, which is okay. I mean, I'm not holding a judgment on that. But why then does a marriage still fail? If you have had all the training of 10 years, you know, there's a lot of attention we need to give, and choices that we need to make at times. The world, I suppose, is about focus, and the success of relationships is about focus.
Father Michael Braille, again, in one of recent interviews, he said that as a Christian community, we need to answer the questions: do you include, welcome, embrace brothers and sisters who are faced with some very specific challenges? And that's the question to the church. The question from Camila is that if we talk about people with homosexual tendencies, do we recognize same-sex marriages, which are civilly recognized in some countries like Luxembourg?
And like the first country that voted it in by popular vote was Ireland. So I know Luxembourg has had a very open policy since, I think it's from the late 18th century. I've looked it up already. I think that's a very good question, and I think Michael Braille's, like Pope Francis, I mean, Pope Francis trying to bring this whole conversation forward, but you're trying to pull with you, you know, an entire diverse population of people. I mean, I think the Christian approach would be to say, yes, inclusion is very important. And I'll go back to what I said about understanding each other and respectfully listening to each other. If God is love and God has made us in God's image and likeness, then where love is, then God is, you know. And we can't sort of say, but not here. There's a challenge there, a very clear challenge, and I think to try and have a fairness and an openness, there has always to be a welcome. Everybody has to be welcome, and I mean, within our church, it pains me at times to hear some of the teachings that in canons that hurt people and cause them immense upset in their lives. But in general, if we turn towards Jesus, and I think Jesus has to be the marker, you know, it's not what happens in church is a development from the time of Jesus. It doesn't make it necessarily right or in the mind of Christ. And I always ask myself, and we'll be told in our pastoral response to people, how do you reach out to people? You reach out by trying to have the mind of Christ. And having the mind of Christ, you have to school yourself in understanding the type of thinking that Jesus had. And Jesus is about liberation. And Jesus is about freedom. And he's about truth. Jesus is about truth. And part of the truth of people's lives, you know, I mean, that question is interestingly worded now, whether it's my English taking it up, you know, about tendency. I mean, a person either is or isn't, and it's to allow people to be who they are in the wonderful creation that God has made them to be. I had a confirmation class this week, and usually when I'm trying to deal with these topics, I collect ceramics, you know, ceramic vases and jugs and cheap ones from charity shops, and I put them all out on a table and I say, look, at every one of these is a piece of pottery. And like yesterday's first reading at Mass, it said that God is the potter and we are the clay, and God forms what's there. We look different. One is bright and one is dull, and one is fat and one is tall and one is majestic, and some get a little bit lost. And it's like the population of the world and our society. But sometimes it's convenient, you know, to cut people off. And I think there will always be hurting groups. Look at the whole American scenario right now, you know, and the divisions that are there. I mean, it's sad to think that in the 21st century, in what's supposed to be a leading power in our world, or what believes itself to be, that there's still an emerging white supremacist movement, or that Black Lives Matter has to become a movement. You know, why does that have to happen in the 21st century? Can we not look at each other as all being human and all made with equal rights? But of course we haven't equal rights, because society dictates paces then, you know, of the wealthy and the poor. And I'm sure Luxembourg is no exception to that. You know, you have a lot of very well-to-do people here. This is the centre of finance, and it's a centre of opportunity. But is it a centre that truly cares for the abandoned, the homeless? And that has to be the challenge. And that is, I think we need to be able to critique every country we live in, and every society and every neighbourhood in an honest way. I thought, actually, I said to somebody yesterday, there are no homeless left on the streets of Luxembourg. But last night I came walking up the Grand Rue, and in one of the doorways on a very, very cold night, like last night it was probably 4 under zero, and there was some person lying in a doorway. You know, this is not good. Now maybe they made the choice to be there, you know, maybe not. I don't know the story. But it's not an equal world when we have people who are homeless and people who are hungry and people who feel excluded. And life is tough enough for young people today without feeling that they're growing up in a world that's going to divide them. So I don't know if that helps to answer that question, but it certainly is something we need to think more about.
Another question is from Olivier. He's a Luxembourger. He's saying that as a citizen, having received a Catholic education, he would appreciate to ask a question regarding so-called celibacy of the priests. And now in 2020, what is the greatest struggle in being a single person? And the current Pope did indicate a few months ago that he personally wasn't against, in principle, of allowing the Church Catholic priests to get married, but there is big opposition inside. And Nowadays, many Catholics do consider Thai celibacy as physically untenable for a normal being, and his own parents, like 91 and 86, are of support of this idea that they consider that this topic should be taken into consideration. And he is also saying that young people's interest in becoming priests has decreased dramatically during the last 25 years. Any preconditions for changes?
I don't know. That's a very complex and loaded question, you know, in many ways. I mean, I could talk about that for the rest of the day, you know, because there are very clear differences there between a single life and a celibate life. They're two different things, and there are lots of people who are single and wish they weren't. You know, we're single because we're obliged to be single in the sense, but we're celibate also as religious. We choose celibacy. Now, diocesan priests don't choose celibacy. They have to be celibate by law rather than by desire.
We
choose celibacy. Well, we choose it, but in religious life, you know.
Okay.
But it's not one of the. It's because we choose to live in groups, you know. And obviously, you couldn't have. It's hard enough having 10 men living together without having 10 women and, you know, a couple of hundred children running around the monastery. It wouldn't work, even for practical points of view. But I think, like, I would be open, of course, to a married clergy, and I think that has to be something that needs to be considered. Now, I think the fall away from vocations has little enough to do with that, because I think a lot of the difficulty with church is that we live in a post-church society. You know, I mentioned yesterday at Mass, we're here in Luxembourg, we're on the eve of Christmas, we're coming up to Christmas, you have lights everywhere, but there is no sign of Jesus. Jesus has been removed from Christmas. Christ is gone from Christmas. And a man met me coming out of church yesterday. He said he had seen a video that said that Jesus is saying, "What gift are you going to give me on my birthday? You know, the lights I don't want." You know, he doesn't necessarily want that, but commerce wants that because that is a superpower. Remember, big groups who produce cards, they're the ones who want these things to continue commercially. But Christmas was never about that. It's about one gift, and that's the gift of Jesus. And what am I going to give? You know, Jesus is the gift that we receive. What is the gift that we give in return to Jesus? You know, will we work towards making a better society? Will we work towards having a better church that will allow the discussions that you're talking about there? And I think people will always. I've known many very good celibates, you know, who have, of course, some people struggle, some don't, but I know many married people who wish they were celibate, you know, and they think, well, it's not all about being stuck in a relationship either, you know. That can be, okay, it's pleasurable and it has all those things going for it, but it can also be a burden. It can be a burden if the two minds aren't the same, if one person has a sexual appetite that's greater than the other. You know, I remember a woman many years ago, I met her and she said, "Father, stop telling people about this sex in marriage." She said, "I would prefer to walk in the forest than go to bed with my husband." And you know, she had a lovely husband, but she meant it for her. She had her children. It doesn't have to be all about sex. It can be about, but there is this preoccupation with, and it's within the church very much. I mean, the only sin seems to be sex. You know, you can't think of that three-letter word without it being a sin. And yet the bigger sins are the hypocrisy, and the bigger sins are the lack of care, or the bigger sins are the failure to reach out to understand people who are struggling in a very sorrowful way in their lives, like through sexual identities and through exclusion. All these things, I think, are big challenges. You can see I will never be Pope.
By the way, I have a question about it, but just a bit later from our teenage viewers. Yeah. So the question related to what you have just said, does this job, the job of a priest, still appeal to young generation?
I think it could and should, you know, it could and should. I mean, it's a worthwhile, for me it has been a worthwhile living, and it's been a very rewarding and satisfying vocation for me. I mean, it's not for everybody. I began in the seminary a journey like 40 years ago, and When I entered, there were 19 of us. I am the only one that's there now, you know. But the others are happy. Last night I had a WhatsApp call with one of my best friends from the seminary. He's married, he has 2 daughters. I'm going to be doing the daughter's wedding. I'm part of their lives. You know, it's about journeying. For me, I get to Luxembourg because I'm a priest. I didn't get here because I wasn't, you know, and I'm part of a lovely community here. The religious community with Père Benoit and the men that I live with, they're my brothers, and I feel that straight away, you know. I don't feel that I'm not. I feel I'm part of it, that we have a common home, a shared mission. You know, sometimes our mission will vary in our minds. It won't be the same, but I know what my mission is. And I've already feel the love and the warmth, and I'm sure that one thing I always say to people, I'm not here to be liked by everybody. You know, you don't have to like me, that's the truth. But if you did, it would help a little bit maybe. But I will try my best. Even if you don't like me, you know, I'll still try to be the best that I can be. So I'll try to provide the best liturgy and the best service and be the best priest I can be, which includes my faults and failings.
And now a few questions from my teenage years, as I promised. So the first one, related to the previous one, what could be the steps on your career ladder, and what are your main key KPIs, you know, key performance indicators, and what are the triggers to get promoted?
Oh my God.
The question is asked by Edward, 16
well,
years old.
Edward, if you were looking, you mean if he wants to be Pope and whatnot, you just have
Whatever
to be,
your career
you just
is.
have to live within a very structured living. I mean, if you want to learn how not to be Pope, then be like me. That's really it. I mean, there is no ladder, there is no career ladder.
No KPIs.
No, and I think, well, there are indicators, surely, there are, but I would say that we live in the church is full of politics, you know, so politics will dominate rather than the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit is the one that we try to live our lives by. So for me, the most important thing is for me to be where God wants me to be. Mm-hmm. How do I know that? I pray about it, I ask for help from some people, I feel it within myself too, because God doesn't want me to be unhappy. God wants me to be content. I have spent time as the leader of a community, 14 years doing that, loved it, but in our congregation, you don't stay on up there, which is great, you come back down. And so, in other words, on the career ladder of somebody who is in, as a religious now, not in the diocese, you know this, that those you will be in charge of will be your brothers on another day, and one of them will be in charge of you. And it would be a great model, I think, for business, that people got the opportunity with their skills, with their skill sets, hopefully based on that. But it isn't always that way. You know, in business it's not always that way. It can be who you know and what pull you have. But I think a person might be given 3 years or 6 years and then be told to come back down. Come back down to the working floor, you know, go on the assembly line, be with the others. And then if after a 2 or 3 year break we decide that we need you still at the top management, then bring them back up there. It's a good model, not the world's model.
A question from another teenager, Oksana, and is it a paid job to be a priest?
Paid job. I'm a non-salaried religious. In fact, since I came to Luxembourg, I am now employed for the first time in my life by the Archdiocese, because up until now, the clergy people in Luxembourg were paid as civil servants by the state. But I think about maybe 4 years ago, when there was the separation of church and state, that changed. So I have a work contract, but within that work contract then I will pay here to this community, because I must pay for my lodgings, and that will go, and the remainder as a religious, it goes back into my religious congregation. So I think the answer really is, as a Redemptorist, it's not a paid job, but the rewards that we're paid with are different to money. It's not money,
yes.
It's satisfaction.
Yeah. What is allowed for a priest? Like dress codes allowed for a priest, that work outside work, sneakers, no sneakers, and can you make tattoos?
I don't have any tattoos. I mean, I like a bit of ink when I see it, but I think some people go too far. It's like balance again, you know. Yeah, I'm sure I could have a tattoo if I wanted. I don't know, would I be able for the pain threshold? piercing the same. I think that can look nice. You know, these things are all attractive. They're part of the world we live in, but they can be major mistakes also. I see some of these people who have the big ring in their ear, and they're on a program at night time now trying to repair the big holes in their ears. You know, it can be a momentary decision, but yeah, dress code for me, I have a religious habit which is very traditional. They don't here in the community have it, but I'm dressed as I am. I wear shorts in the summer and, you know, all ordinary clothes. I have 4 sisters and 2 brothers and lots of nephews and nieces. They have kept me normal, thanks be to God. You know, I don't want to be a god, I want to be me.
Yeah.
And part of being me means, yeah, why not have, I buy a lot of my clothing in the charity shop, which maybe people don't know, but there are good charity shops around. And you can buy whatever wardrobe you want for 20 euros.
And do you have time to do sports? And if yes, what kind of sports are you fond of?
I was, as a young person, I was a runner, and I ran with a national team, you know, in cross country. But unfortunately, when I was 33, I had a heart attack, and my cardiac health wouldn't be the best. But I walk every day now, and I told you for the reasons, but it's also heart reasons and heart related. But I like watching sport too.
Today we're in pandemic for about 10 months, and a lot of people, they feel vulnerable, fearful. Some people, on the contrary, they feel quite enthusiastic about self-development, finding new things in their lives, opening up. What's the biggest lesson you have learned during these 10 months?
I think one of the things that I have learned is that people are resilient, you know, that we can adapt to new models of living. It's very uncomfortable. I mean, it's really uncomfortable not to know where you're safe. 1 year ago, if somebody asked you to wear a mask, you would wonder what is wrong with them, you know, but now everybody must wear them. And that's about, I think, returning to understanding a shared responsibility for our world. The pandemic is here, the disease is here, it is ending lives, it is a very dangerous disease, it can overpower hospital systems, so we all cooperate. And just as people now in church, we can't have everybody in church, and there are people who are very unhappy about that. We have a limit of 100, they're socially distanced, they're all masked, and those who go beyond the 100 are unhappy. You know, they arrive at church and they're told they cannot come in, which is a terrible thing in some ways. But then we have adapted to social media, and we now broadcast on social media, which is a great development, and people are happy to do that at home. It's a changed world, really a changed world, Angela.
Quick questions from Kiran. How to balance stress during these challenging times, and how to be content?
Yeah, I think to try and do our best, you know, chart a middle course, cooperate with what's required. I don't think it's a time for being rebellious. Yeah, I see these movements on the paper of people who are saying that, you know, their rights are being taken from them. All our rights are gone from us because of COVID. We can't go home, we can't hop on planes the way we did. Businesses are closing, lives have been lost. We need to understand the pandemic as a pandemic. You know, my name isn't Donald Trump, so I'm not in denial. We need to open our minds to the reality and go with the science. And the science is very clear. And hopefully a vaccine will come that will be satisfactory. I'm not overly confident about the vaccine, because I think the trial time perhaps isn't sufficient, but we're so desperate for a solution that we'll probably go with whatever comes. But, you know, the world has gone with whatever comes in the past, only to learn that there are terrible side effects. Like I'm thinking of the whole thalidomide experience of the 60s and 70s that left children being born in all sorts of, you know, irregular ways and with body parts missing. And, you know, we don't know. You'd hope, and we can only hope and pray. It's the Advent message of hoping that we will find a way forward. But we must share the responsibility.
And the question from Arnold from the Netherlands, will the pandemic make people more religious?
I don't know, it might make them more reflective. I think I lived in the lockdown in Ireland, and I was living at home, and I did a lot of gardening, and, you know, I think people appreciated more what they had. And I think they also maybe learned a little bit about the rhythm of life, that we possibly the pandemic presented an opportunity for us to get to know each other more. But I know there's a flip side to that, because people who are forced to live, in small spaces, there was an increase in domestic violence incidents all over the world. But that appreciation, I think, is very important that we are gaining, and that is a positive side. I also think that sometimes the division between church and state has been too complete, like as if one is a monster versus the other. And if we could only hold on to, let's say, things like Sunday being a day that is sacred, because we do need, our bodies and our minds need a day of rest and a family day. That's why it's there. It's not there for punishment, but it's there to say that even in the creation story, on the seventh day there is a day of rest, and people need the rest. They're working harder than ever before. Why not close the shops and leave them all closed on a Sunday? It happens in Austria, it happens in other places. Can't we survive for one day without the temple of the shopping centre? I think so.
Unfortunately, we have to wrap up our conversation, and to finish it, I want to mention the words of your father. Once you said in one of your videos, "Today is the tomorrow we worried about yesterday, and all is well." So now we are approaching this great day of the year, Christmas. What would you tell to our viewers? Maybe some advice, some blessing.
Okay, I just think that just like the Advent message, as we come, that's my father's saying, all right, today is the tomorrow that we worried about yesterday, and all is well. All will be well. And let us maybe, as we enter into this Christmas, having done a bit of the reflection that some of your viewers and questioners have asked about simplifying life, maybe go for a simpler life. We're being asked not to have the big party Christmas this year. Maybe think about what Christmas is about. It's about peace. It's about the gift of peace. It's about the presence of this person, Jesus, or this prophet, or whatever you want to call him, or for the non-believer, I don't know what it becomes for the atheist there. But there is a definite gift that comes from Christ. And that is a gift to all of our homes, to all of our hearts, to all of our minds. And I think ask ourselves the question, am I prepared? Have I prepared a place in my heart for peace and for happiness and for just the simpler things in life? And I would appeal to all families, when you have your Christmas this year, that it would be a blessed Christmas for you all, but let everybody play their part. Let people begin to say thank you and please and sorry, and all the simple tools that Jesus tells us about, but that we know are part of etiquette and the best that we can possibly offer in our world. And for all of your viewers, Angela, for all of your work, I think this is a very important chapter for you, because you're giving people an opportunity again to step into the lives of other people. And it's in doing that respectfully and listening not as a challenge. Listen to it as, if it helps, it helps. If it doesn't, thanks for listening, but have a wonderful Christmas to everybody.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Father Michael, for accepting my invitation, being here with us, sharing openly and sincerely so many insights with us, and opening your heart. Thank you. It's my great pleasure having you today at our Lux Etiquette and Service Cafe. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I enjoyed it all. Thank you.
And dear friends, thank you for tuning in. It's time to finish up our cup of coffee and say goodbye until our next meeting. Christmas is coming. Believe in miracles and think of great things in the world. I wish you a blessed and very happy Christmas. Visit our cafe, watch our great guests and follow their examples and get your insights. Subscribe to our Lux Etiquette and Service channel on YouTube. Thank you once again for being with us, and hope to see you again.